Jimmie freaking Ward. I was dogging this guy a couple of years ago. I was looking for reasons to nitpick his game. You showed me the light, and now the whole football world has seen it. 2 interceptions on Monday Night Football. I think he's on pace for a Pro Bowl year. I think his performance last night was extremely important. If the Niners go anywhere, they can thank Jimmie Ward for that. What do you think of what Jimmie did?
So obviously, I always love what Jimmie Ward does, and I loved it again last night. Two things I wanted to mention. Just about a year ago, last year, just exactly a year ago, I felt like was your turning point. You had the Seattle game where Jimmie Ward would be on the other side of the field, someone else would make a tackle, and you would tweet, "Where's Jimmie Ward on that play?" and
Yeah.
all of that, and then all of a sudden, you kind of changed your tune on that, and now Jimmie Ward saying Grant at the end of his presser. So
It's
an
like when you're a
amazing
first
180.
round pick and you're making all that and you get that big contract, I think a lazy type of analysis, which I fell into, is like, all right, well, let me see an impact. But the impact for him is erasing tight ends and playing multiple positions. And it took Vish to point it out. Thank you.
No, I did not take me. I feel like you would have gotten there too. I just think
Salah
it's
helped.
funny
A lot of
how
people were
I
like,
just
dude, you're missing it. Okay, let me try again.
and I thought that 180 is actually one of the great stories of the 49ers the last 2 years, how Grant Cohn and Jimmie Ward became best friends. I do think we need a piece on that. But obviously he was fantastic. I
Yeah.
thought, this game, honestly, and this is where when I was little, I used to like to read writing, like sports writing a lot. And the writing atmosphere has changed, and I feel like in terms of the 49ers, honestly, you don't get it as much, especially for a player like Jimmie Ward. But I thought this was an opportunity, to write a story about Jimmie Ward and how he's the longest tenured 49er.
Yes.
And after all he's endured, he's the one who steps up with the season on the line. The kind of story that
Yes.
would be written about a Joe Staley or somebody like that. Because,
Good point.
for all the injuries he's endured in his career, he's been one of their most consistent performers. He's had to put up with a lot of crap, a lot of bad defensive systems, a lot of misuses of him. I mean, this regime
Bad luck with
thought.
bone breaks and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Even this regime thought Adrian Colbert in 2018 should be their free safety and move Jimmie Ward to corner. And Jimmie Ward was one of their best corners, but it's clear that he's a Pro Bowl level safety. And, John Lynch
Yeah.
is a safety as a GM, and I don't know why that happened. So, I mean, again, I don't want to rehash mistakes because Jimmie Ward was outstanding last night. The playmaker and the turnover things, I think that's great. I think it also goes to show you how much luck is involved. I mean, Stafford threw a very errant pass trying to give Odell a chance. Ward was there, and he finally got a pick, which he just hasn't gotten those gifts the last few years. And then the Higbee pick, again, just right place, right time. Ball just bounced to him. You said, oh, there's the football, and Jimmie Ward pick 6. I don't think the issue I kind of have is now people are using those two things to now say, oh, he's a better player. Oh, he finally made a play. Well, to me, even if he didn't do those two things, those two things is why they won the game yesterday. Honestly, those two picks, in my opinion. So, but even if he didn't do those things, I think it's high time we appreciate just what a great football player he is. This guy is one of the most complete football players on the team. And I tweeted this yesterday, and I think it's high time. The way people talk about Debo and Kittle and Bosa and Trent Williams, Jimmie Ward is right there in this conversation. When we did our top 10 ranking of the 49ers list last offseason, I took a lot of heat for putting that guy at 5. I remember a lot of people in the live comment section were like, you're crazy. You put Jimmie Ward at 5, blah, blah, blah. He is one of the 5 best players on this team. He's a leader. He's a captain. He's an elite football player. He does everything at a high level. He's as important to this team as any of those aforementioned players like the Warners, the Bosa,
improved every year.
And he's an incredibly good player. And I can't wait.
Let me say why I was so moved by his performance last night.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it reaffirmed all the great things you've said about him, but it was like, in an anecdotal sense, it was legendary. It was clutch. The season was going nowhere. And who's to say that? I don't think the Niners would have won this game without Jimmie Ward. He didn't play last week.
Yeah.
He was questionable this week for this game. Had he not played, had he needed one more week, they might have lost. Because the way this team has been going is like no one has stepped up as like taking ownership as a leader of this team. Warner did it last year. People have done it in the past, but no one has done it for this team. And Steve Young and freaking Joe Staley and freaking Jerry Rice called the whole team out. Who's going to do it? There's no dogs on this team. And I'm not saying that Jimmie Ward showed that he's a dog or anything, but he's the one that made the difference. Like, the Niners have had good first drives in the past. They've done that before. The difference of this game was by the time they got the ball the second time, they were up 14-0 because of Jimmie.
Yeah.
That was different.
And, I'm going to have fun going back and rewatching this game. But one of the things we talked about earlier, right? They were all over everything. Because, if Jimmie Ward doesn't play in this game, honestly, forget the reasons why we just said they won, all of that. They would struggle with this past game without Jimmie Ward. We saw Hufanga has very specific limitations, and you can go after him. And it's really difficult to hide him if you don't have a Jimmie Ward starting on the other side of him.
Nope.
So
they don't win this game without Jimmie Ward. And they probably would have beat Colt McCoy the week before if they had Jimmie Ward. That's how important.
There's a good chance, although it's difficult to beat anybody when you're turning the ball over.
Had some big mistakes in that game. Did he not?
Yeah.
He did.
And of course, the Niners offense also turned the football over. But the one thing I did want to mention, Grant, is I thought the legendary summation was exactly right because, he's just one of those players. I just feel like, and I feel like you've, especially the last year or so, been pushing it. But for whatever reason, the local media, I'm looking for a national media representation for Jimmie Ward, but the local media does not sit here and do these things for him. Weird. And, if it was a different player, we would be talking like the way you're talking, would be headlines on every single one of these sites for the teams that cover the people that cover the team. They would be talking about how Ward saved the season, the longest tenured 49er.
I mean, anytime Fred Warner does anything, he gets a bunch of ink, right? National, local.
Right.
Yeah, well, I don't understand what it is about Jimmie Ward. Probably because people wrote him off. And now they have to
I think that's what it is. And I mean, I was talking about this also.
It's not his personality. I mean, he's wonderful. Are you kidding? He's a dream.
Maybe it's the fact that he said Grant and not one of the other writers' names.
That was pretty cool. I liked it. So Jimmie freaking Ward, salute. And last thing I want to say before we move on, Dre Greenlaw gets a lot of anecdotal love. Look, you say what you want, but he did this. The Niners wouldn't have gone to the Super Bowl. They wouldn't have been number one seeds. He's important in 49ers history for those reasons. Well, Jimmie Ward too. If this season goes anywhere,
if they make the playoffs this year, it's because of Jimmie Ward.
Thank Jimmie, because this team was going nowhere, and Fred Warner, as great as he is, didn't have the answer. He wasn't going to turn this around. Nick Bosa wasn't going to turn this around. It just I always go back to King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone. This year, it was Jimmie Ward pulled the sword out of the stone.
And
he did it.
Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel have been great all season, and it still was 5
and it still
out of 6
wasn't
losses,
leading to wins. It had to be Jimmie. It's great.